Hello students. Today we'll discuss the writing section of the March 2021 US SAT QAS. So let's begin. The first passage is called Shedding Light on the Problem. Plant pollinating insects are essential to the reproductive process of many flowering plants, but the numbers of these insects are declining around the world. Interestingly, a 2017 ecological study led by Dr. Eva Knopp suggests that artificial lighting, the modern convenience that illuminates many streets, storefronts, and athletic fields, may be contributing to the decline of these organisms. Okay, so here I need to choose the correct form of the verb. So the modern convenience that illuminates. So that seems to be correct because the first obviously is that I need to use the present tense because I'm talking about something in the general sense of being used today. And I need to use the singular, right? Because the subject is modern convenience, which is singular. So the modern convenience that illuminates many streets. Option A seems to be the right answer. All the rest are plural. So that is another way that you can quickly eliminate the other three. So since we'll grade this paper at the end, let's write our answers on the Word document. Question 1, we got A. Okay. Um, Daytime pollinators such as bees and butterflies have many well-documented threats. So Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators, artificial light. Okay, so here we need to figure out the correct punctuation, and the right answer should be B, because when it says Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators, that external threat, that potential threat was artificial light. So the colon is the best punctuation at this stage because colon is used to answer an expectation created by the sentence. And the expectation here is to name the potential threat, right? So B should be the right answer for question 2. The semicolon is not correct because a semicolon is used to join two independent clauses, and artificial light is not an independent clause, right? It's just a phrase. And uh, no punctuation is not an option because you want to give a break at that point and say that this is the potential threat, right? And the comma is not the best punctuation at this stage because when you have a comma, you basically use it to either separate a dependent clause from an independent clause in a sentence, or to separate items in a list, or when used in a pair to separate additional information in a sentence. While here, there's a very specific purpose we want the punctuation to do, which is to say that this is the potential threat, right? And the colon does that best. Okay, let's move on. To do so, the team located samples of the thistle plant Cirsium oleracum, which is pollinated by insects in mountain meadows that are ordinarily dark at night. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to uh, prevent visits from pollinators, not outlaw, right? This is not a legal issue. It's not about opposing visits, but to kind of not make the visits happen. And revoke is not used in the context like this. Revoke is basically to take back a contract, to take back an order, right? Something like that. So to prevent, I think C is a good answer. So before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators. However, others were left unpacked. Okay, so if I wanted to say however, I would need to have a full stop or a semicolon after pollinators because I'm basically starting a new sentence when I start with the connector, however. So, so then option A is grammatically not correct. But I also want to indicate a sense of contrast between the fact that some plants were covered with mesh bags while others were left unpacked. So the sense of contrast is best captured in option B. So that should be my answer for this. Option C and option D don't really convey contrast, right? And also, if I wanted to say meanwhile, just grammatically, I would not have a comma after pollinators. It would have to be a full stop or a semicolon, right? So B is the best answer. The scientists measured how much fruit each plant produced over the course of its life cycle. Okay, question 5. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the paragraph. Half of the plants in each category were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. Okay, so but then illuminated. Okay, so this is definitely part of the experiment, so it should come here somewhere. So let's see. To do so, the team located samples which in mountain meadows that are ordinarily dark at night. Some of the plants, each category, so the category would have to be the plants that were bagged and unbagged. So this sentence cannot come before 3. It has to come after 3. Yeah, so it will come after 3 because once the half of the plants in each category were illuminated during the nighttime hours, the scientists measured because the illumination happened first and then the measuring happened. So this should come after sentence 3, right? So it's option C. Okay. Whereas the unbagged plants' food production changed significantly with light exposure, the bagged plants saw no such effect. The bagged plants couldn't be visited by pollinators because the fact the bagged plants self-fertilized. Okay, because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the bagged plants self-fertilized. So I already like D, so I'm going to write that. But let's look at A, B, and C. The bagged plants couldn't be visited, so the lack of pollinators. That's just too long and it's a little unwieldy. So A is not correct. Being that they were unable, that's so being is something that the SAT doesn't like, and this is also unwieldy, so B is wrong. The pollinators couldn't visit the black plants and those plants. So this doesn't create the cause effect that I'm looking for, right? Uh, because the pollinators, because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the back plants self-fertilize. So that cause effect is not captured in C. So D is the best answer. Okay, the back plants self-fertilized and thus averaged only about 15 fruits per plant in dark sites, but 85 fruits per plant in illuminated sites. Okay, so let's look at the graph. So the bagged plants, right? We're talking about the bagged plants self-fertilizing. Okay, so about 15 in uh, dark side and a little more than that in illuminated side. So yeah, so A is definitely wrong. Uh, yeah, so it's definitely B, right? It was about 15 fruits per plant, whether they were in dark sites or illuminated sites, because it's not very different between the dark and illuminated. It's about that much. So I'll go with B for 7th. Okay. On the other hand, unbagged plants from the dark sites produced an average of 90 fruits per plant, whereas uh, unbagged plants. Okay, so I I'm already leaning with C because I have a comparison to make between unbagged plants from the dark sites and unbagged plants from the illuminated sites, right? So I'll just quickly confirm 90 and 78. So 90 and yeah, it is C, right? Because it also makes sense when I say that unbagged, I've already talked about the bagged plants. Now I'm talking about the unbagged plants from the dark sites produced an average of 90 fruits per plant, whereas unbagged plants from the illuminated sites produced an average of 78 fruits per plant, a 13% decline in fruit production for plants that were illuminated at night. From these results, the researchers concluded that nocturnal pollinators were avoiding the unpacked plants in the illuminated site. Uh, hmm, okay, so let's go to the scientists also found that the decline in nighttime pollinator visits coincided with the decline in visits from daytime pollinators. Hmm. So this, yeah, okay, so we'll come back to 9. Okay, I'll just write 9 something here and then 10. Yeah, so they found that the decline in nighttime pollination visits coincided with a decline, right? So coincided with seems to be correct. So option A is the right answer for 10. Corresponded with could go. So C is not correct because it has for, and correlated with also could go. So the problem with C and D is the preposition. Okay, we'll just finish this and then we'll come back to 9. The precise cause for this dual decline was unclear. One possibility is that the plants were less nourishing to daytime pollinators when no longer visited by nighttime pollinators. Whatever the reason, artificial illumination clearly has adverse effects on plant pollination and the increasing presence of artificial lighting, right? C. It can't, we need to have presence. It can't be presence because that just doesn't make sense. And presence of something. The increasing presence of artificial lighting may pose a major problem for biodiversity. Okay, now we need to look at this again. Let's quickly, right. From these results, the researchers concluded that nocturnal pollinators were avoiding the unpacked plants in the illuminated sites. Um, yeah, nighttime decline in nighttime pollination means that we would have to go with A. It affected the overall yield of the plants because that is what will segue into the next paragraph, that there was a decline in nighttime pollination. Right, so it will be A for night. Okay, all right, so that's the first passage. Let's go to passage second. Benefits of dress code flexibility. In July 2016, the coffee shop chain Starbucks instituted a new policy to relax its dress code. The decision allowing employees to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and colorful socks reflects workplaces across the US. Reflects a new trend in workplaces. The decision reflects a new trend. Yeah. Option B. Um, I can't just say it reflects workplaces. The decision cannot really reflect workplaces. The decision has to reflect something, right? So a new trend is a good option. Option B. New trend or tendency, that's just redundant. So option C is wrong. And then is reflective of a new national trend is not required because I'm already saying across the United States and it's also too long as an option. So D is wrong. From retail services to large corporate offices, employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential workers, boosting morale among current employees. It can make a company more attractive to potential workers and boost morale among current employees, right? So it should be D. You need to understand that the the first problem, obviously, let's say that the first option A is grammatically incorrect because let's say the meaning that I intended to say was correct, then I would need a comma after workers, right? Because I can't have a semicolon because the second part, boosting morale among current employees, that's not an independent clause. So I can't have a semicolon. The other problem is that if let's say there was a comma, even then it would not be correct because if I'm saying that it's attractive to potential workers, that is not boosting morale, right? The attractiveness to potential workers is not boosting morale among current employees. Current employees are a different group, potential workers are a different group, so you kind of need to separate them. So, and boost would separate that. So, D is a good answer. B and C are just, they're not correct from the perspective of grammar, redundancy, etc. Okay, given these benefits, more employers ought to embrace the trend of relaxed dress codes. There are a number of reasons why job applicants might favor companies that allow for some degree of flexibility in workplace attire. Having the option to dress casually can mean greater physical comfort. Also, being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing employees to retain a greater sense of personal identity in the workplace. So I'll go with C. Um, First of all, I don't like 10 because it's kind of hangs. It doesn't really have an obvious precedent in a noun that is to refer to it. So I would not go with that. I also want to talk about, I'm talking about job applicants, employees in the plural, right? So I don't want to say him or her. That's one reason, apart from the fact that it's a pronoun that doesn't have a precedent, right? And D is clearly wrong because it uh, distorts the meaning, right? I'm trying to say that the employees, the people, will retain a greater sense of personal identity. Okay, let's go to the next one. Individuals' motives may vary, but job recruiters are finding that many potential employees do indeed share a preference for flexible dress codes. Okay, individuals' motives, right? So I'm looking at individuals in the plural, and it's possessive because their motives, the motives of individuals, right? So I need the apostrophe after S. So option A needs to be the correct answer, right? Option C is not correct because that refers to one individual, and that wouldn't make sense because I'm talking about individuals in the plural sense, employees' motives. Okay, so individuals' motives may vary, but job recruiters are finding that many potential employees do indeed share a preference for flexible dress codes, and embracing this preference could help companies attract a wider range of talent. According to a 2016 study, essentially none of those surveyed wanted to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. Okay, the writer wants to set up information that follows in the sentence with an accurate interpretation of data, which, uh, okay, 31% reported that they would prefer a company with a business casual dress code, and the further said they would prefer a casual dress code. Or, okay, so that would mean 31 business casual. Okay, so 20. So that's like more than half, right? Because, yeah, so so D is a good answer for 16 because also it kind of goes with the sentence, right? I'm trying to say that people want a relaxed dress code. So essentially none like that. I mean, let's say this was true as per the graph. Hypothetically, let's say it was true. I wouldn't want to use that data point because the point I'm making in the passage is that I people prefer, right? So that the data point would not support my analysis, right? So it is D. Okay. Um, and further, right. Okay. Then at this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence. Only 18% prefer a more formal dress code at work. Yeah, I could use this, right? Because basically it's a very small number. And if they want a more formal dress code, it's kind of saying that um, I'm kind of saying that a very small number want a formal dress code. So I would like to add it because it provides additional evidence that supports the writer's argument. So A is a good answer. Yes, because it refutes an opposing point of view. That doesn't make any sense. There is no opposing point of view. This is just a general statement on preference for casual dress code. And then C and D are no answers. I wouldn't want them anyway. Yeah. So, okay. In addition to making companies more appealing to potential employees, dressing casually can also be a fun way to express one's individuality. Okay, we need to introduce the paragraph, so we'll just read a little further. When the accounting firm Crow Howard LLP asked workers what changes they would like to see in the workplace, workers said that dressing casually would help them most with being comfortable. Okay, so the first problem is when the accounting firm, I don't need to have anything after the comma, right? So when the accounting firm Crow Howard asked workers what changes they would like to see in the workplace, workers said, so I just need a workplace and comma, right? So option B. Okay. So I'll just write something here. 19 is B. Right. Workers said that dressing casually would help them most with being comfortable, being engaged, and being productive. Said chief. Okay, this is a good question because you might think that a comma after with makes sense because we're kind of starting a quotation, but if you think about it, we are not really starting a quotation. We are just kind of borrowing something from what Julie Wood said, and we are like putting it in the sentence to make the sentence flow. So when you do that, when you pick up selectively from a quotation and use it to kind of fit the sentence, you don't really need a punctuation after the word. So the answer for 20 would also be B, right? The firm started allowing workers to wear jeans and other relatively casual attire, and the response from employees was overwhelmingly positive. With our change in dress, the level of excitement and feedback from our people has been really phenomenal, Wood said. Okay, so I don't think it's about expressing one's individuality. Not option B, customer base, fewer conflicts, and current employees' morale. Okay. Uh, okay, what was the focus of the previous one? The focus of the previous one was wider range of talent. Okay, that's talent. Yeah. Okay, so this was about getting a wider range of talent. This is not really about individuality, right? Yeah, I'm leaning towards morale because it's not customer base and conflicts. Yeah, I'll go with morale because I'm kind of stuck between A and D, but I think I'll go with D because talking about better productivity, being engaged, right? So that relates to morale. It's not really about expressing individuality. Okay, let's go to the 21st. Of course, formal workplace attire is appropriate and even required in some contexts. Yeah, so 21 is just A, right? Because I'm actually trying to say it's appropriate. So admissible is not the good answer because admissible means something that can be permitted, right? And that's not what I'm saying here. I'm kind of saying that it is appropriate and may even be required. Unexceptional is not in, it's unexceptional is something that is beyond good, right? And that's not something that fits the context here. And again, genuine doesn't fit. So I'll go with A. And yeah, for example, job interview and client meetings often require professional clothing. However, in certain occupations, such as law enforcement, uniforms without personal embellishments are still necessary. Uh, Job interviews require professional clothing. Furthermore, because now I'm giving a different reason for why formal attire may be needed. One is in job interviews and client meetings, and then there are occupations where formal attire is necessary, right? So I'll go with B for this. Conversely, is kind of presenting the same argument from a different perspective. So that's not what this is doing. And Yeah, incidentally is not, doesn't fit. Incidentally would make sense in a, like for example, incidentally I was there when he arrived, right? So that doesn't really fit the idea of providing a new piece of information. So furthermore is better. When possible, though, companies should consider relaxing dress codes. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the second passage. Let's do the filtered net. Search engines make it easy for us to keep up with current issues, but the information we find may not be as objective as it appears. Many search engines collect data from users, such as their locations and search histories. Uh, Many search engines collect data and use what they gather to filter search results, right? So I'm going with D for this. I'm not going with A because if I have to say they use what they gather, that has to start a new sentence. So I would need a comma, I would need a semicolon or a full stop after histories. So yeah, uh, so that's why D is the best answer. Okay, this invisible customization may create what media CEO Ellie Pariser has termed a filter bubble, a biased worldview that is reinforced when it is consistently confirmed rather than challenged. Yeah, so 24 is A, right? Because I'm trying to say that because ads are tailored to my personal taste, they can reinforce or strengthen a biased worldview rather than challenge it. So you can't really enlarged is not really what we are talking about, right? We are saying that it gets reinforced, it gets strengthened. Uh, yeah, and similarly, defend is not what we are talking about. Yeah, so none of the other words make contextual sense, right? I'm trying to say that a biased worldview is kind of bolstered, right? Boosted. So, so I'll go with A. It is important, especially with regard to political issues, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit. When search engines make them explicit, yeah, so that users can be aware of potential biases when making important decisions. Yeah, so this is just option C because that's the concise option and conveys the meaning correctly. Option A, whereas, introduces a contrast, which is not correct in this context, right? So it is important that search engines make their filtering processes explicit so that users can be aware of potential biases when making important decisions, especially when those decisions are shared with friends and family members on social media. Okay, so we'll come back to this because this question needs us to answer the main argument, right? Okay. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results can lead to potential biases, right? So this is D because filtered results is the subject, how they can lead to political biases. So there's no need for any punctuation between a subject and a predicate, right? So D is the right answer. Option B is wrong because I can't have a colon in the middle of a sentence, right? A colon can only come at the end of a complete sentence and doesn't make sense here anyway. In an experiment conducted before the 2014 general election in India, Epstein created a fake search engine and asked 2,000 undecided voters to use it to research candidates running for the office of Prime Minister. Voters were divided into three groups, and each group was presented with results favoring a different major party candidate. Participants whose searches favored a given candidate were 12% more likely because participants, plural, right? So I need to have a plural verb, which is were. And I need to have it in the past tense because the context is the past tense in this paragraph. So participants whose uh, searches favored a given candidate were 12% more likely to report a positive view of that candidate than were participants in other groups. While there's no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew their results in favor of certain candidates or positions, filters based on users' browsing histories could produce similarly slanted results. Okay, so I need to first look at 29 while there is no evidence. So I'm already saying while, so there is no need for however. So B and C is out. And I need to have a comma, right? Because that's like one part, that's like the dependent clause, while there is no evidence, so forth. Then, so I need to go with A. While there is no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew their results, filters based on users' browsing history. So first of all, users, plural, right? So it has the apostrophe has to come after S. So A and C are out. And browsing histories, plural, right? So uh, so it will be D. Users is plural possessive, and histories is just normal plural. So 30th is D. Okay. This possibility is especially troubling because, okay, so I finished the previous paragraph by saying that there may not be intentional bias, but filters based on users' histories could produce slanted results. This possibility is especially troubling because most users think that searches display the full spectrum of perspective on an issue. Um, right. Yeah, so I think A is like a good answer because why is this troubling? Because from the user's perspective, they don't know, they are not aware that there could be a bias in the search results, right? The vast majority of participants in Epstein's experiment did not recognize the bias in their results, right? Because if you look at other options in 31, they don't really look at, so it's not relevant because the answer that I'm looking for is why that slanted search results, why they could be a problem, right? Politicians hope to counteract this. A 2012 survey from the Pew Research indicated that 66% of respondents believed that results obtained through a search engine represent all available information rather than a personalized selection. Uh, okay, so this is C. This is a good question because I'm saying in the previous one that the vast majority did not recognize the bias. And then I'm giving another survey result which says that 66%, the majority, thought that results obtained through a search engine represent all available information. So it's kind of repeating this that idea that users are not aware. So the finding with Epstein was not atypical, was not different, was not something that was one off. It was reinforced by other experiments and surveys. Okay, and 33. Filtering is essential to search engines because the sheer volume of information on the internet makes it impossible to display more than a small portion of all relevant results. But in the case of political information, it is important for users to be aware of the existence of filters and of the factors that might bias results. If search engines published this information by displaying a warning that results are selected based on user preferences, for example, users would be better able to read political coverage online with an appropriately critical eye and thus base their political beliefs on a fuller range of information. Okay, so do you want to delete or keep this underlined portion? I think I want to keep it because I'm talking about one way in which that filtering can be avoided, right? It introduces an additional point. No, it's not an additional point. It supports the, yeah, it's a solution, right? So B is a good answer. So it should be kept. Right. Okay, we need to go back to 26. So what was happening here? When search engines, users can be aware of potential biases, especially when those decisions uh, impact civic duties such as candidate selection and voter opinion. Yeah, so I'll go with C for 26 because the whole purpose of the passage is to look at politically sensitive information online, right? So the best answer which conveys that sense of politics is C. Okay, Let's now go to the last passage. 34. Oglala Lakota art gets rolling. Okay. A 2015 study led by First Peoples Fund, an organization dedicated to supporting Indigenous artists, revealed that roughly 4 out of 10 households on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota had home businesses centered on arts or handicrafts. Okay, so here I need to have a comma after artist, right? Because my main sentence is a study led by the People's Fund revealed this. And the People's Fund is an organization dedicated to supporting Indigenous artists. That's additional information. So I have a comma before and I have a comma after artists. So D is the right answer for this. Okay. This finding reflects the deeply rooted importance of art within the reservation's Oglala Lakota culture. However, the study also concluded that the vastness of the reservation limited local artists' ability to collaborate with one another, find mentors, and sell their art. Most effective transition. Okay. Regardless of First People's Fund worked with a group of organizations and supporters to implement a plan for strengthening the creative economy. Okay. Uh, okay, in light of the study's results, right? Because the study revealed that the artists were limited in their ability to collaborate with one another, etc. So, in light of these results, the fund worked with a group of organizations to strengthen the creative economy. The outcome of the organization's combined effort, uh, the outcome, that's my subject, so it has to be singular, and the only singular answer is option D, right? The others are plural, so it will be D. The outcome of the organization's combined efforts was Rolling Ray Arts, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaborations and forge critical partnerships. Okay, so we'll come back to this because this is about the main point. Rolling Ray Arts itself was a collaborative work of art by Oglala Lakota artists. Now, Donald Montelieu, a 2014 inductee into the South Dakota Hall of Fame, was selected to give the bus a distinctive appearance. He created, okay, um, paragraphs. Okay, we'll just read the rest of it. He created a lavish design for the bus. This design, intended for the sides of the bus, had vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired by the narrative scenes of ledger art. Okay. Uh, he created a lavish design for the sides of the bus with vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired by the narrative. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going with B because the problem with the others is that they're like really packed with information and they don't make it easy to understand what is being said. Right. So he created an average design for the sides of the bus. We know that he worked for the sides of the bus with vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired by the narrative scenes of ledger art. So 39 is B. Okay, so I need to find 37 and 38. 39 is B. I think 38 would be B as well because we are talking about ledger art. So he says that Donald Montelieu, a practitioner of the traditional Plains Indian art form known as ledger art. Right? So it introduces that idea. Okay. After Montelieu produced drawings of the design, and Oglala Lakota graphic artists adapted them to fit the bus, helping transform its exterior into a brilliant traveling canvas. So this is no change because I'm looking at the pronoun for the bus, right? And it's is the correct pronoun for the bus. So 40 is no change. Okay, let's go to With the eye-catching collaboration complete, the bus was ready to begin journeying across the far-flung communities of the reservation. The bus's versatile interior allows artists to work together on projects, study with mentors, and even set up bank accounts to help grow their art as a business. The bus also hosts a gift shop whose manager buys works on site to sell elsewhere along the bus's travels, enhancing artists' ability to benefit financially from their art. Yeah, so 41 is A because I'm kind of saying that this improves their ability, right? Exalting is not correct in this context. To exalt is to kind of put somebody on a pedestal, to kind of uh, think very highly of them. Embellish is not correct because embellish is used to kind of, in decorative art, it is used to kind of put extra uh, things of beauty. So that doesn't really fit the context here. And exaggerate would have a negative connotation that wouldn't fit here. So enhancing artist's ability is correct. Okay. Local artist and rancher Tony Richards used to have to drive more than an hour to reach a local cultural center where he sold his jewelry at the gift shop. A lot of times I didn't have time to go over there, Richards said. Now with rolling Ray Arts, is it Res Arts or Ray Arts? I'm thinking it's probably Res Arts. The shop travels to him. So there, here you don't really need any punctuation, right? Because it's not that this is not additional information on anything. So B would be the right answer. He's just saying that he's a local artist and rancher, and then you're introducing him. So there's no punctuation needed. Okay. While the organization behind the project ultimately, while the organizations ultimately aim to open a permanent art space and gallery on the reservations to serve as a fixed cultural hub. Yeah, so this is just D because I'm saying while all of this happens, so a comma is good. The art in motion of rolling res arts will continue, right? As Warren Gus Yellowhair, an artist trainer for First People's Fund, said, what I do is contact some of the established artists and utilize some of their skills. Main idea. Okay. Jeremy Stab said, yeah, that's B is not a good answer because that's not the focus to get comfortable with banking. Brandy McDonald, no, that's also access to capital. Lori Poria, yeah, D is not a concluding sentence. It sounds more like an introductory sentence. I think I'll go with A because it kind of focuses on the mentoring aspect, which is definitely an important part of this venture. I contact some of the established artists and utilize some of their skills. Uh, the main idea of yeah, so that yeah. Uh, yes, I'm just thinking if it's between A and C. We'll just come back to this. Let's go to 37. Let's finish that first. Um, the outcome of the organization's combined efforts was rolling results, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaborations, create new commercial opportunities, right? And it's not about forging partnerships with, yeah, create commercial opportunities because they were able to sell their stuff. So I'm going with B then for this. And yeah, not computers and entrepreneurship. Okay, so the main focus is to kind of uh, artistic collaboration. And okay, so then which is what is a good answer? Uh, hmm, okay, that's A sounds good. What about I'm not going with B and I'm not going with D. Brandy, I'm really confused between A and C. But I don't like C for some reason. because I don't know if other needs in the community. I think C sounds better as a concluding option, but it's not, the content is not very relevant in C. Okay, I'll just read the initial part. While the organization, it will continue. I think I'll go with C. C just sounds like a better answer from the perspective of a conclusion, right? A is a little, it doesn't really sound like a concluding statement. I'll go with C for this. Okay. Right, let's check our answers now. This is, yeah, A, B, C, B, C, A, B, C, B, C, D, B, C, D, A, C, D, B, C, D, A, C. Okay, so ninth is not correct. We'll come back to ninth. Okay, 12th, B, D, C, A, D, C, A, D, 17, A, D, B, B, A, B, A, D, B, B, A, B, 23, D, A, C, C, D, C, D, A, C, C, D, C. Okay, 29, A, D, A, C, B, A, D, A, C, B, D, C, D, triple B, D, C, D, triple B, AABDC, AABDC. Okay, so we got all correct except question 9, I think, right? Yeah, let's go back and see 9th. I went with A, and the right answer for 9th is D. Okay, so let's just write the correct answer first. This is the right answer. Yeah, okay. So I think, I don't know, like D may work because we do talk about daytime pollinators also not making up for the loss, right? But I felt like this was like a new idea because it says scientists also found, right? But then again, overall yield of the plants cannot make sense unless you talk about daytime as well, right? Yeah, so I think D is better than A, I think, because to talk about overall yield, I need to talk about daytime yield. And to talk about daytime yield, I need to talk about D. And that kind of goes with the next paragraph. Okay, so that was the writing section of the March 2021 US SAT paper. Hope you found this exercise useful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I'll try and answer it as soon as possible. More such videos coming, so please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.